The Roman Empire truthfully would not have been as vast or as successful if the Romans had not developed their transportation network. Their network of transportation also gave them advantages economically, politically, and socially. Goods could be brought to markets and traded, raw materials could also be brought to industry, troops could get places faster as well as control larger areas of land, and individuals could travel to study or to gain economic fortunes elsewhere in the world. The most prevalent forms of Roman travel were by road and by sea. As the Romans expanded their power across Italy and elsewhere, they began to connect the conquered cities to the capital using a system of roads. Roads were under the responsibility of magistrates, who gave out contracts for building and maintaining. Army engineers and later civil engineers were the ones who constructed the roads, and they were helped by usually an army workforce, but sometimes a civilian workforce. The public main roads were known as via publicae. The Romans built their roads by first establishing a course for a certain section of the road. The Roman roads are famous especially for their straightness. Romans knew that the fastest way to get from one place to another was through a straight line. In order to get their road so straight, they used several methods depending on what type of area they were building a road. For most areas where there was high and low land, they would take sightings from high spots. However, for flat land as well as roads going through woods, they would light fires, the smoke from the fire acting as a guide to stay straight. On their marked out course, the Romans would then dig a trench about 1 yard deep. From there, the earth was beaten flat and sand went at the very bottom. Then large stones went on top of that. Pebbles, often binded with cement, would go on top of the larger stones. This created a firm foundation. The road would then be paved with stone, gravel, or small flints. The surfacing had a slight tilt to it called a camber, with the highest part in the middle of the road to assist drainage, where water would then run from the roads into ditches on the side. You can see the camber of the road in this image. A good road would shed water during the rainy season and permit travel at a rapid pace in all kinds of weather. If the Romans had to build their road above a marsh or body of water, an embankment called an agger in Latin would be made. The first well-constructed Roman road was the Appian Way in 312 BC. When first built, it went from Rome to Capua, which was 132 Roman miles. Later, it was extended to Brundisium. Roman miles are slightly different than our mile today. A Roman mile was 1,665 yards, whereas a mile today is 1,760 yards. Milestones known as malarum in Latin were constructed along many Roman roadways. They included the distance in one direction from usually Rome, if in Italy or a province capital, to the milestone itself. They were placed about every Roman mile. In 20 BC, the Curators Viarum, which was a board of officials, was set up in order to manage state highways. The different ways to travel by road were by walking, by riding a horse or mule, or by riding in a wheeled carriage. The most common of the vehicles was the four-wheeled carriage called the reta. Although the reta was comfortable, it was not nearly as fast as the less comfortable two-wheeled carriage called the cisium. The record in the cisium is 200 Roman miles in 24 hours. Another sort of vehicle was the lectica, which was a portable couch almost with curtains surrounding it. It was carried by up to 8 slaves. The lectica was the most comfortable of all the types of travel. In fact, they were so comfortable they could be used as ambulances. Overall, the Romans made it possible for travel by roads to be almost or equally as efficient as travel by sea.
At the height of the Roman Empire, the Romans occupied a large portion of Europe, North Africa, and East Asia. It stretched from the north of England down 2,500 miles to the tip of Spain, to Holland, Greece, Egypt, Turkey, and Iraq. With such a large expanse of land and a population of more than 1 million, developing forms of transportation were vital to the survival, management, and expansion of the empire. Also, transportations of goods were vital to the economic expansion of the growing empire. Goods ranged from silks and perfumes to weapons and instruments, all which made their way across the Roman Empire's intricate trade routes. The Romans built long expansions of roads for the two key purposes of moving the Roman army and trade. However, even more important than roads were the sea routes that covered the Mediterranean and Black Seas. Romans had become experts by this time in engineering ships. By the time the empire fell, they had opened the seaways for generations to come. The most important river in the ancient world was the Tiber River. It stretches about 250 miles into modern-day Italy and was the natural highway for traffic in Latinum. It was used to defend Rome as well as transport almost all imports and exports out of Rome. In fact, the Tiber was so important that the Byzantine Wars were fought over controlling it. By copying and improving their allies, the Greeks and Carthaginians' ships, or in Latin called navis, Roman ships were structurally prestigious. With strong ships, the Roman army excelled in battle. They used the ship called the trimes. It derives its name from the 3 rows of oars on each side, with 1 man per oar. They typically had only a single sail, meaning it was propelled strictly by manpower. The boats were made from softer woods like pine or fir, which allowed the ship to move faster. Warships were actually very important in trade as well. Oftentimes, when food would be delivered by sea, the ships would be accompanied by warships to protect them. When trade items were delivered by ships, the Romans had to develop a system where goods could be received so they created ports. The central port in the ancient world was the port of Ostia, now known as present Flamincio. It was the nearest port to Rome and therefore a hub of trade for imports and exports. The port of Ostia is located just at the mouth of the Tiber River, 15 miles away from Rome. Most travel and trade occurred between Ostia and Carthage, which was a major city in North Africa. It took around 3 to 5 days to travel between the port of Ostia and Carthage. From land stretching almost around the globe, the Romans imported goods into the empire. They imported glasswares, iron, leather, perfume, silk, spices, tin, and wine. The majority of these goods came from North Africa, Middle Eastern areas, Spain, and France. Even the wild animals used in gladiator fights were brought by sea from Africa into Rome. To ensure the journeys were safe for both sailors and the valuable goods, the Romans took precautionary safety measures, such as building lighthouses, safe harbors, and constructing docks. The Roman army also did their best to rid the Mediterranean from the pirates who terrorized the seas. As the Roman economy began to go into recession and oppressive social conditions raged on, people found that by stealing and pillaging, they would be much better off, so piracy began to flourish in the Mediterranean. Despite the growth in numbers, the Roman senators did not find it necessary to suppress them, because they were actually, in a way, serving their interests. Pirates supplied the empire with slaves and also disrupted the grain trade, allowing prices of produce to rise in Rome. Pirates made traveling in Rome, however, very dangerous and put traders at great risk. The Emperor Julius Caesar even was captured by pirates at one point. He was detained for a month and a half, and upon escaping, he returned, captured them, and crucified them. In the end, it was Pompey who really helped quell the rampant piracy in the Mediterranean. Within 3 months, he captured many pirates and their strongholds, putting them to death or making them slaves. Traveling in ancient Rome took many forms, whether it was a vacation for the wealthy, roads for commoners and military, or the seas for trade and the navy. Traveling was an essential mechanism that enabled the Roman Empire to expand as vastly as it did.